So the first question that I want to ask is, what is authenticity? When you think about this word, what kind of comes to mind? And something that has, worked with me is I want to kind of tell you a story about myself and what has happened and how I got to really define my authenticity. I was a person that went through the motions and kind of applied, formulas that were given to me by other people. So if you think of the formulas in life that are given to you, you're told to go to school, you're told to graduate from college, you're told to get a job, and you're told that equates to success. But the reality is that I followed all of those rules, and still that didn't equate to my success. About authenticity, we talk about a formula that was given, usually by somebody else, or a predetermined notion that was given to somebody else. And I followed that formula to the T. I graduated from high school. I went to the university in the United States and studied pre-medicine human biology with minors in psychology and sociology. I went to South Africa and I got a job as a management consultant. But actually what happened to me is, even though I followed that formula, which I was told equated to success, I fell into a very, very deep depression. And what happened was I ended up feeling like I wasn't worthy. I ended up feeling that I didn't have the right tools and capabilities. And all of a sudden, when I went into this deep depression, I got unhappy and I stopped going to work and I started feeling just, out of it. I would spend days in bed and I had a really, really, I felt like there was a weight on my shoulders. And in that, I started asking myself a few key questions. And one of those was, why do I exist? What are the things that in my life that I really enjoy doing? And why am I not doing them? And in really trying to tackle my depression, what I did is I quit my job. I moved back to Zimbabwe. I traveled to India to learn meditation. And I started this company that I founded 9 years ago. And when I did that, I realized that who I was and what I was doing was misaligned. And what I needed to do was align those things. And that is what I define as authenticity. In fact, another form or definition of authenticity is your highest form of existence. It's when you are unapologetically who you are. It's when you're living a life that is for you and that you are pursuing your priorities, where you are going for exactly what you need to do unapologetically and are living for your own self. So in doing this, I kind of created a blueprint of what it means to kind of figure out what your authenticity is. And one of the things that I came up with is the realization that we almost have two selves in us, right? If you look at the screen now, you have what you call your acquired self. And I define your acquired self as the self that has predetermined roles that are given to you. So even before you come out of your mother's womb, there are certain roles and definitions that are given to you. If you're a boy, there are certain expectations from you. If you're a girl, there's certain expectations of you, right? If you're from a particular culture or religion, all of these expectations have attachments. And all of these attachments can sometimes weigh itself on you, especially if you only define yourself by these attachments or labels. And sometimes these labels you don't even ask for. They're just kind of given to you, right? An example of some of these labels are being a mother, being a daughter, being a son, being a husband, being of a particular religion. All of these things are the acquired self because some of these labels are not necessarily given to you. Now, what happens is most people start feeling overwhelmed and feeling some form of anxiety, stress, or depression is when the acquired self starts to take over at the expense of your authentic self, which is who you really are, right? And this kind of starts to create a crust around you. And you wonder why people start saying things like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Even though I followed the formula to success, I've gone to school, I've graduated, I've gotten a good job, but something is missing in my life. That's because the acquired self has created a crust around who you really are. And so your authentic self is unapologetically expansive, right? It's empathetic, it's considerate of others, but it's also considerate of self. And your authentic self, when it is unbound, is on the right-hand side of the screen, right? So that's what happens when you kind of reconnect with who you really are and living your highest form of existence. All of a sudden you're expansive, right? And you can give enough energy, not only for yourself, but for other people. Now, the problem is that most people are living their lives with the crust of the acquired self upon them. So what I encourage people to do is to identify and drop some of those labels that have been given to us, especially if those labels have been given to us by other people, right? So think about it. Just take a mental moment to kind of think about the labels that you have on yourself, right? And what happens when you take off of all of those labels? You kind of find the core of who you are. And that's exactly what I had to do. I had to figure out who I was at my core without the labels, without all the attachments, without all of the expectations that were placed onto me, because I was defining myself by those things. And that is exactly what made me unhappy.